Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! After years of working as a high school teacher, dealing with rowdy teenagers and endless paperwork, I finally decided to treat myself to a luxurious getaway. I'd saved up for months, cutting back on little indulgences and picking up extra tutoring gigs on weekends, and when I stumbled upon a last minute deal for a week at the Sapphire Resort, I knew it was meant to be. The moment I stepped into the gleaming lobby, I felt like I was in another world. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and staff that seemed to anticipate your every need. It was a far cry from the chaos of my classroom, and I was determined to soak up every moment of relaxation. But on my third morning at the resort, I witnessed two incidents that left me questioning if I really belonged in this world of luxury after all. I headed down to the restaurant for breakfast, looking forward to the lavish buffet I've been enjoying. As I settled at my table with a steaming cup of coffee, I noticed the family seated nearby. A couple, their young child, and an older woman who seemed to be their grandmother. What caught my eye wasn't their animated chatter or the child's occasional squeals, it was their table, or rather, the mountain of food piled upon it. They had essentially recreated the entire buffet at their seats. Plates upon plates were stacked high with every item imaginable. Crispy bacon, fluffy scrambled eggs, piles of fresh fruit, towers of pancakes dripping with syrup. I watched in disbelief as they made trip after trip to the buffet, returning each time with overflowing plates. The little boy giggled as he balanced the full bowl of cereal, milk sloshing over the sides. The grandmother cooed over a platter piled high with pastries, while the parents filled plate after plate with hot items from the chafing dishes. As they continued their feast, I noticed other guests approaching the buffet with disappointed expressions. Many items were completely depleted, leaving nothing for the rest of us. I overheard snippets of their conversation. The mother says, "Did you try the smoked salmon? It's divine. I think I'll get some more." Father says, "Better hurry. Looks like they are running low. Grab extra for me too." Grandmother adds, "Oh, don't forget those little cheese danishes. I want to take some back to the room for later." The child, "Can I have more bacon and pancakes and waffles?" "Of course, sweetie. Get whatever you want." Huh? They seemed completely oblivious to the fact that their actions were affecting everyone else in the restaurant. When they finally finished their meal and left, I was shocked to see how much food remained on their table. Entire plates of untouched ham, cheese platters barely nibbled, and croissants still warm from the oven. It was clear all of this would end up in the trash. Shaking my head, I tried to push the incident out of my mind and enjoy the rest of my breakfast. But my peace was short-lived. As I went to get a refill of my juice, I encountered another disturbing situation at the beverage station. The resort had a fancy drink machine with built-in glass jars for various juices and water. It was a sleek system. You would fill your glass directly from the spout, then return the jar to its slot where it would automatically refill. I've been impressed by the efficiency and the cleanliness of the setup. But as I approached the machine, I noticed something odd. A woman in designer workout gear was removing the entire water jar from its slot. At first, I assumed she was just taking it to her table to fill multiple glasses. But as I waited my turn, I realized the jar wasn't coming back. Curious, I looked around the restaurant, and to my astonishment, I saw the woman striding purposefully towards the exit, water jar clutched firmly in her manicured hands. She couldn't possibly be. But yes, she was actually leaving the restaurant with it. I stood there, mouth agape, as she disappeared through the doors. Unsure what to do, I approached the nearby staff member. "Excuse me, I don't mean to cause trouble, but I just saw a guest leave the restaurant with one of the water jars from the beverage machine." A staff member tells me, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" She went out the restaurant with a jar? Really?" The staff member's confusion quickly turned to concern, and she hurried off towards the kitchen, presumably to alert management. I returned to my table, my mind reeling. How could people be so entitled and disrespectful? It would never even occurred to me to behave in such a way. Taking an entire jar of water back to your room, creating a private buffet at your table while leaving nothing for other guests, it was baffling. As I pondered these incidents, I noticed a commotion near the restaurant entrance. The woman who had taken the water jar was being escorted back in by two stern looking staff members. Her face was flushed with anger as she clutched the jar to her chest. This is ridiculous. Do you know how much I'm paying to stay here? I should be able to take water to my room if I want. Ma'am, we understand you're a valuable guest, but the restaurant equipment needs to remain here for all guests to use. We'd be happy to bring bottled water to your room if you need it. That's not the point. I shouldn't have to ask for anything. You people should anticipate my needs. As they argued, I noticed the family from earlier slinking back into the restaurant looking sheepish. A manager was speaking to them in hushed tones, gesturing towards the buffet. The parents' faces reddened as they nodded along, while the child looked confused and the grandmother appeared mortified. The manager says, "We appreciate your enthusiasm for our offerings, but we kindly ask you that you only take what you intend to eat. Other guests were unable to enjoy certain items because the buffet was depleted. In the future, please be mindful of portion sizes and consider making multiple trips if needed." The manager then led them towards a more private area to continue their discussion. Meanwhile, the woman with the water jar was still causing a scene. "This is unacceptable. I demand to speak to the owner. I'll have you all fired." Just then, an imposing man in an impeccable suit approached. The staff straightened up immediately, and I realized this must be the hotel owner himself. He says, "Madam, I understand there has been a misunderstanding about our restaurant equipment. While we strive to meet every guest's needs, we also have a responsibility to ensure all guests can enjoy our amenities equally. Perhaps we can discuss this further in my office." The woman's bravado seemed to deflate slightly as she realized she was now dealing with someone in true authority. She meekly handed over the water jar and allowed herself to be led away. The rest of my vacation passed without incident, but those moments, those moments stayed with me. I'm a 32-year-old mom with a 6-month-old son. I've been practicing Taekwondo since I was a kid, then earned my black belt when I was 20. It's always been a hobby and a great way to stay fit, but I never imagined it would come in handy the way it did last week. My husband and I moved to a new neighborhood about a year ago, right before our son was born. It's a quiet suburb with lots of young families, which seemed perfect for raising our little one. I've been on maternity leave, enjoying my time with the baby and slowly getting back into shape. That day, I decided to take my son for a walk in the park near our house. It was a beautiful spring afternoon, and I thought some fresh air would do us both good. I strapped him into his stroller, packed a diaper bag, and off we went. The park was pretty busy, with kids playing on the swings and couples walking their dogs. I found a nice bench near the playground and sat down to feed my son. And that's when I first noticed her. A woman, probably in her 50s, with bleached blonde hair and way too much makeup. She kept looking our way, but I didn't think much of it at first. After I finished feeding the baby, I decided to take a little stroll around the park. As I was walking, I heard quick footsteps behind me. I turned around and saw the same woman power walking to catch up with us. "Oh my god, what an adorable little baby," she says. Thank you." I tried to keep walking, but she stepped in front of the stroller, blocking my path. "How old is he? What's his name? Can I hold him?" Her rapid-fire questions made me uncomfortable. I instinctively tightened my grip on the stroller. "He's 6 months old. I'm sorry, but I don't let strangers hold him." "Oh, don't be silly. I'm great with babies. Come on, just for a minute." She reached for the stroller, and I pulled it back. I said no. "Please respect my decision." "Well, I never. You young mothers these days are so overprotective. In my day, we let everyone cuddle our babies. It takes a village, you know." "That may be, but this is my child and I get to decide who holds him." I tried to move around her, but she kept blocking my way. My heart started racing and I felt a surge of adrenaline. Something wasn't right about this situation. "Listen here, Missy. I've raised 3 kids of my own, and I know what's best for babies. That little one needs some grandmotherly love. Before I could react, she lunged forward and started unbuckling my son from the stroller. I was astonished at what was happening. In that split second, all my taekwondo training kicked in. Get away from my baby! I shoved the stroller back with one hand, creating space between her and my son. With my other hand, I grabbed her wrist and twisted, forcing her to let go of the buckle. She yelped in pain and surprise. How dare you? I'm just trying to help. I don't need your help. Back off now, or I'll call the police. Instead of backing down, she got even more aggressive. She tried to push past me to get to the stroller again, and that's when I knew I had to take more drastic action. I shifted my weight, planted my feet firmly on the ground, and executed a perfect front kick. My foot connected with her solar plexus, knocking the wind out of her. She stumbled backward, gasping for air. You assaulted me. I'll sue you for everything you've got. You tried to kidnap my baby. I acted in self-defense. Now stay down, or I'll have to hurt you more. I pulled out my phone to call the police, keeping one eye on her and one on my son, who had started crying from all the commotion. As I dialed 911, the woman started to get up, a wild look in her eyes. That baby deserves a better mother, someone who knows how to raise children properly. She charged at me again, arms outstretched, like she was going to tackle me. I didn't have time to think, I just reacted. I spun on my heel and delivered a roundhouse kick straight to her jaw. There was a sickening crack, and she dropped like a sack of potatoes, out cold on the grass. By this time, a small crowd had gathered. A couple of joggers came over to see if I needed help. Are you okay? We saw what happened. Yeah, that lady was crazy. You did the right thing. Thanks. Can you keep an eye on her while I talk to the police? I don't want her getting up and trying anything else. I gave my statement to the 911 operator that went to comfort my son. He had calmed down a bit, was still fussy from the excitement. As I rocked him gently, I saw the police cars pulling up. The officers took statements from me and the witnesses. They were shocked when they heard the full story. The police officer tells me, Ma'am, you showed incredible restraint. Most people would have done a lot worse to someone trying to take their child. I just did what I had to do to protect my son. They arrested the woman, who was just starting to come around. As they put her in handcuffs, she started wailing. This is all a misunderstanding. I was just trying to help that poor baby. The police told me she might have some mental health issues, but that didn't excuse her behavior. In the days that followed, I had a hard time sleeping. I kept replaying the incident in my mind, wondering if I could have done anything differently. But every time I looked at my son peacefully sleeping in his crib, I knew I had done the right thing. My husband was incredibly supportive, even suggesting we install better security systems in our house. The neighbors rallied around us too, bringing over meals and offering to keep an eye out for any suspicious activity. As for the woman, she was charged with attempted kidnapping and assault. I later found out she had been in and out of psychiatric facilities for years. But eventually, I decided to start teaching a self-defense class for new moms at the local community center. If my experience could help even one other mother protect her child, it would be totally worth it. My mother never shared the details of her will with me or anyone in the family. When she died, we all learned that she had made me executor of her will. My two brothers were very upset that their little sister, who has an MBA and a solid family life, was picked over them. Neither of them finished college, and one is an invalid who hasn't left his house in years. Mom left her house to the two brothers with the instructions that I sell the house valued at around $250,000 and divide the money between them. All her cash was to be divided between the heirs. Her other property was a small vacation home where her and my dead sister's ashes would be scattered. She left it to me and my dead sister's children. 30 or so years earlier, one of my brothers had told her he wanted to build his own cabin, so she deeded him an adjoining lot. When she died, it was still an empty lot. He convinced one of my nieces to sell him her share of the cabin for $1 and not tell anyone of their heirs before the paperwork was signed. The only way I found out was because he posted on Facebook, I am now a proud partial owner of my family's mountain cabin. According to my lawyer, no one can keep me out of it. We aren't friends on Facebook, but some mutual relatives are, and they alerted me to what had happened. In the state we live in, even a fractional ownership allows the partial owners to enter the property anytime without restrictions. There were some very ugly emails between him and my niece when she tried to get the property back, and he admitted he did this out of spite to hurt me and make sure my family and I didn't get to enjoy the property. Brother number 2 had emailed my niece several times and told her he was so proud of her for selling to her uncle and he'd never seen his brother so happy. Mom's will was written so that the estate would retain ownership of all the property, including real estate, until the probate process was complete. Brother didn't understand that and thought he would have immediate ownership. His lawyer didn't read the will very well and thought the same thing. The only way to get the share of the cabin away from him was for my niece to refuse her share of the inheritance. Even with that, it cost a $600,000 estate, including the house she left to them, roughly $30,000 in attorney fees to fight this. But we won, and the cabin is safe. I don't know how much he had to pay his lawyers, but it was a lot of money. The situation dragged on for months. The property Mom had given him sits directly across from the cabin. Out of spite and anger, he clear-cut the property Mom had given him and brought in over 100 tons of gravel, so the wooded area now looks like a gravel parking lot. This is directly next to the place where Mom and sister's ashes are scattered. The brothers had asked for the 3 burial plots next to my dad. They adored and idolized him. Mom is scattered at the cabin and she won't be using them, so I gave them the cemetery plot paperwork. But before probate ended, I had the plots put in my name and they are legally mine now. The paperwork they have is worthless, but they didn't know it. I didn't tell the brothers and they won't find out until one of them dies and they can be buried next to my dad. Honestly, I know Dad wouldn't have approved of what they did. He loved Mom. I will be upset her ashes are scattered next to a gravel-covered lot, not the woods she loved. I haven't told them what I've done. Screw them. They wasted money from her estate and made Mom's resting place look horrible. They don't deserve to be buried next to my dad. This is entitled behavior on a large scale, and it's too amusing not to share. I live in a small town with a population of roughly 7,000, and everyone is currently divided over a Chinese restaurant. It's been in the local news and even made it to Australia's national news. That's how intense the situation has become. I'll try to keep this brief. Back in May of this year, a local Chinese restaurant owner informed the local club from which he was renting kitchen space that he wanted to retire. He gave them his resignation, stating that his last operating day will be at the end of June. Cue the local entitled individuals en masse. One local, whom we'll call Big Kevin, teamed up with another resident, whom we'll call Mega Karen, and they decided to protest the closing and try to force the club to keep the restaurant open. This poor man had been running the restaurant for 30 years without a break, and just wanted to retire peacefully. But no, Mega Karen started a petition while Big Kevin organized the protest. Now enters our third major player in this saga, whom we shall call the Wicked Witch. The Wicked Witch, working behind the scenes, began leaking false allegations to the local paper, claiming that the restaurant owner was being forced out by the club. The club issued their first and only statement on the matter, clarifying that the restaurant owner was retiring and even provided his retirement paperwork as proof. At this point, the national news got involved and interviewed the restaurant owner, who stated on television that he wanted to retire. You'd think that would be the end of it, but no. Mega Karen managed to collect about 1,200 signatures on her petition, which she handed to the club. The club's lawyer deemed it invalid because over 900 of the signatures were improperly filled out. Each needed to include a signature, printed name, and either a club membership number or phone number to be valid. Or the same person signed multiple petition slots. So Mega Karen started a new petition, but this one only garnered 74 signatures. Meanwhile, Big Kevin organized the protest, which he didn't attend, nor did anyone else. The club then hosted a meeting for all the club members of the general public and the club's board to discuss what was happening. But again, despite all the complaints, no one showed up. Now, Mega Karen and Big Kevin are demanding that a new meeting be held, the club's general manager be fired, and the club's board be disbanded and a new board elected. The Wicked Witch once again approached the newspaper with a statement from the restaurant owner. The restaurant had now been closed for over a month. The statement claimed that since the club had renovated the restaurant and planned to start a new restaurant, they, the old restaurant, would consider renting the space again. Before you wonder why the space wasn't renovated earlier, it was part of the Chinese restaurant's agreement that they would maintain and renovate the space as they saw fit, as stated by the club in their public statement. The Wicked Witch told the paper that the real reason the Chinese restaurant left wasn't because they wanted to retire, but because the rent increased from $250 a week, which they had paid for 28 years, to $385 a week last year, and then $485 a week this year. This was for a restaurant space, while other local restaurants are paying $2,500 a week or more for similar or smaller spaces. Big Kevin, Mega Karen, and many other locals were shocked at the cost of rent, and they all now claim it should have remained at $280 to encourage the restaurant to stay, even though it could have meant the club would likely have had to close due to struggling with running costs. The club even broke down their operating costs to show the members and locals how expensive it is to keep the place open, but still, it wasn't enough. I can't with this town anymore.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.